as someone who is superior to the others. Whatever he is writing as one scholar, narrating what is happening in this. That is how he tried to interpret the Indian civilization. He reached a number of conclusions. One of the conclusions was that the inhabitants of this place, who are supposed to be well read, the Brahmins, they consider that there is no one which is superior to them. There is no civilization apart from their own, and in the entire world there is nothing but we. All else is gone. Perhaps we are back to the 10th century. What Al-Biruni had written about the conditions of his period, what he found in India, that is what we are today trying to duplicate. We and nobody else. And that is one of the reasons that almost all the professional historians, I today stand here to represent the largest body of the professional historians, the Indian History Congress, being its secretary. We oppose what is happening not because something is being changed. We are opposing the changes because history is being replaced by myths. And one of the things which is being tried to be circulated is that there was always a clash. We were the superior people, and there were certain people who came from outside, the foreigners. As a student of Delhi University, perhaps you are aware, when did the concept of a nation start? It's a very recent development. There was no nation India. And if there was no nation as India, there were no foreigners, there were no locals. Right? But what now is being tried to be taught is a group of foreigners came and everything was hunky-dory here, everything was superlative, and suddenly all the changes started. 2 years back, there were certain changes which were made in the syllabus of BA Honours History. And when protests were launched, we were told that no, it is just a specimen, it's not final. But just 2 years later, now the NCRT textbooks are also being revised. What is being revised? All reference to mutual cooperation is being brutally done away with. I'm not one of those who would say that Mughals are being banished from history. They are not. When the director of NCRT, when he gives an interview and says that there are people who are bluffing when they say that we are trying to remove the Mughals, actually he is correct. NCRT is not removing the Mughals. But what are they doing? What they are doing is that only those portions of Mughal history are being retained where you can show some clash, where you can show some evidence of atrocity, where you can show that there was one particular community which was acting against some other. So there is Chittor, there is Ranthambore, and there is Akbar. all references to Sulekul, all references to the fact that actually the Mughal army was also led by the Rajputs themselves, that are being very silently things which are being. I won't go on dilating on this topic because I have a limited period of time. But this background which I have given to you, that became the reason that I chose this topic, structures as registers of shared heritage. You may change the syllabi, you may change the books which these students are going to read. But unless you dynamite all those structures which were constructed in the past, you will not be able to hide the truth. Today, we would be discussing this very thing. The sacred religious place. और उसके साथ जो कार्विंग दी है उस स्टोन मेसन में, और जिसको टॉलरेट किया है बनवाने वाले ने, टॉलरेट क्या किया? उस पीरियड में ये कंसेप्ट ही नहीं था कि टॉलरेट करना है. The lotus bud, which today, unfortunately today, we have started giving religion to various architectural features. बहुत सी चीजें हमारे यहाँ मुसलमान हो गई हैं, बहुत सी हिंदू हो गई. जैसे हम आपस में डिवाइड हो गए. नदीम साहब आए थे अलीगढ़ मुस्लिम यूनिवर्सिटी के, जाहिर है मुसलमान थे, मुसलमानों के अच्छाई की बात कर रहे होंगे, वही लेक्चर दिया था. दिस इज द थिंकिंग व्हिच इज डेवलपिंग these days. What I am trying to show you is that this was not the case when we go to our past. Sorry. Let me. This is the gateway to the mosque, which is known as Badshahi Mosque, and the person who constructed his name is Aurangzeb. The villain. और ऊपर जो उसके जो पतले पतले जो एक मिनरेट्स जो उस पे लगे हुए हैं, ऊपर क्या है? Once again that lotus flower. A building is sponsored by Aurangzeb. याद रखना बेटा, last decade of Aurangzeb's reign, there is a source which informs us that one of the daughter-in-laws of Aurangzeb is traveling. कारवान जा रहा है. And the guards who are supporting her are Rajputs. Remember Jadunath Sarkar telling us that anti Hindu, anti-Rajput policy of Aurangzeb. I.H. Qureshi, the famous Pakistani historian who once taught in Delhi University, claiming that Aurangzeb represented Islam, Dara represented the aspirations of the Rajputs. Same Aurangzeb, his daughter-in-law is being accompanied by the Rajputs. Last decade, it's somewhere around 1700. 1707 he dies. Suddenly, this small group is attacked by the Marathas. Marathas actually surround this party. The princess is, very afraid. She doesn't know क्या होगा. Perhaps she was thinking like us. कि जो बचाने वाले हैं वो राजपूत हैं, अटैक करने वाले जो हैं वो मराठे हैं, तो मैं तो मुगल हूँ. But what happens? This Rajput commander, I am forgetting the name, I have written it in my frontline article. he goes up to this lady and tells her, don't worry. And the dialogue which he speaks, I always tell my students, Asmate Chohtaiya wa Rajputiya Yakast. The honor of the Rajputs and the Mughals, Chohtai is Rajput. Remember that Mughals never called themselves as Mughals. Had you called Baba the Mughal, he would have you killed. The Mughal was a term given by the Europeans. So, Asmate Chohtaiya, you Mughals, your honor is the same as the honor of the Rajputs. Even if the honor of one of us goes, the honor of the other also goes. And the end result in this source is that this small party of the Rajputs who were accompanying the princess, they were able to scatter the Marathas and save the day. I'm not interested whether the day was saved or not. What I am interested in is that till the last decade of Aurangzeb's reign, this cooperation was there, which is also reflected in one of the famous mosque structures built by Aurangzeb himself. You know, when in India a new type of building construction started, the tombs. Tombs were never being built here in India. And so the inspiration for the building of tombs came from the Abbasid tombs. As the Abbasid caliphs were building, you know that the bloodiest history in the world is the history of the Muslims. Jitni qatl o gharat मुसलमानों के बीच में हुई है, वो शायद किसी और में कम हुई हो. Jesus was assassinated by other community, not by the Christians. In Islam, after every few decades, you would hear one group of Muslims killing the other group of Muslims. I won't say much. हमारे मुफ्ती भाई नाराज हो जाएंगे. 4 खलीफा हैं, पायस कैलिफ्स, उसमें से एक अपनी मौत पर हैं, बाकी 3 मारे. अब आगे मैं कुछ नहीं बोलूंगा. The end result was that by Abbasid period, मजबूरी हो गई थी इनकी कि when they would create tombs, the actual burial would be within a subterraneous chamber, so that अगर कोई इनके मरने के बाद भी हमला करे, you remember what happened when Jats revolted near Agra. That is a tradition, might not be true, that they were able to dig up the bodies of Akbar and burn it. Other historians say that this is not correct, whatever, but this was what was happening during the period of time. So from the first tomb which was built in Delhi itself, Sultan Ghari, Ghar means cave, the underground chamber, this type of architecture started. A fortress-like outer structure, but then in this structure, because the grave is to be situated in a subterraneous chamber, तो अभी इतना ही मालूम था कि ऊपर भी कुछ बना लेना है, ऊपर प्लेटफॉर्म बना दिया. The actual grave is, and this tradition continues up till the tomb of Sultan. All the Mughal tombs, जो ऊपर कब्रें आपको नजर आ रही हैं, they are all replicas. The actual graves are, and this is a tradition which the Mughals borrowed from the Abbasids. Not Mughals, all the sultans and those who became the rulers in it, all of them. It was only during the period of Alauddin Khalji, when Alai Darwaza was made, that the knowledge of true arts came to be established. You can see the Jamaat Khana Mosque with a beautiful big dome, arches which are not very clear, the Alai Darwaza in near Qutub complex, they are all structures dating back to Alauddin Khilji's period, from where a true arch. What is a true arch? An arch which is made with the help of a keystone and wedge-shaped stones, which are known as voicers. अगर आप यूं रखेंगे तो वेट कहाँ जाएगा? नीचे जाएगा। जब नीचे जाएगा तो आप जैसे कोतुल इस्लाम मॉस्क पे देखा था, आपने सिर्फ उसको स्टैगर करके रखा था, तब नीचे ही प्रेस कर रहे थे, वो कॉर्बेल्ट के ट्रू आर्च नहीं, शेप आ जाता है। यहाँ जो ट्रू आर्च है, जिसमें आप अगर ऊपर वाला पत्थर होगा वो सीधे नहीं रखा जाएगा, वो टेढ़ा होगा, नीचे से कटा होगा, वो इधर पुश करेगा, उसके ऊपर वाला उधर पुश करेगा। इट वुड बी ऑल्सो नोन एज रेडिएटिंग आर्च, जहाँ सूरज की किरणों की तरह पूरा वेट चारों तरफ। नाउ डोंट आस्क मी व्हाई द बिग डोम एट ताज महल इज सर्वाइविंग. It has no weight. It's almost weightless. Its weight is not falling on the building itself. Like, and so is the case with these rooms. Incidentally, there is a work in Sanskrit, not in Persian, written by a person who is not a Turk. His name is Thakur Pheru. The book is in Sanskrit. The book now is available because it has been edited by Professor Sarma, a Sanskrit scholar now settled in Germany. Before retirement, he was teaching at Aligarh. He edited and published this book. And in this work, which is written by Thakur Pheru mentions that he was the mint master of Delhi during the reign of Alauddin Khilji. Stop saying के non-Muslims को सर्विस पे अकबर ने लेना शुरू किया था. He is a mint master. He is actually the finance minister. Holding the सिक्का अगर उसने गलत तोल के अगर छाप दिया तो पूरी उनकी इकोनॉमी गई. So he is holding a very high position in the finances. And he is Thakur Pheru. And in this work, he is basically a man of arithmetics, geometry, because without that knowledge, आप सिक्कों के वेट से मेजर्स ही नहीं डिसाइड कर सकते कितना परसेंट उसमें मेटल जाएगा, सिल्वर कितना होगा, क्या वेट होगा, ये सही है कि दोगला सिक्का है, और you have to know all those calculations. Now in this work, he also gives a chapter on building construction. And in that, for the first time, he mentions the arch and the dome. And incidentally, this Sanskrit work, which is the first in which arch and dome, both the things appear in an Indian text, he is telling the architects how to make an arch, how to construct a building. And what is more surprising is, actually not surprising, is that there is no Sanskrit term which he is using for both arch and the dome. Suffice to say that the buildings of Alauddin's period plus the works written by Thakur Pheru both go to prove that by Alauddin Khilji's period, the local indigenous architects, master craftsmen, masons now became aware of the new technology which had entered with the coming of the Il-Bari Turks into the North Indian subcontinent. And the end result was that from now onwards, all the buildings had domes, all the buildings now had true arches. I would want you to pay attention to the pinnacle of this dome. This is, a gate constructed during the period of Alauddin Khilji, one of the first domes, one of the first true domes. And what is there on the top? A kalasha, derived from the temple architecture. यहाँ के मेसन को कुछ समझ में नहीं आया कि खाली खाली ये गोल गोल बनाने से क्या फायदा है. तो जो मंदिर के शिखर पे जो लगाता था. And what is there? I mean, if you look at it, this slide is not very clear. You have that lotus flower motif. ऊपर जो वो flower जो ऊपर बना हुआ है, that is actually a lotus flower taken out directly from temple architecture. Again, this is the dome once again at Delhi. किसका है ये? कौन से तुगलक का? रियासुद्दीन का. It's one of the first domes जहाँ मार्बल का इस्तेमाल किया गया, a new material. But then look at the कलश on the top. पूरी डिस्क है जो वो एक मंदिरों के ऊपर होती है, खासतौर से जो ओडिशन जो सो कॉल्ड नागरा स्टाइल टेम्पल्स के ऊपर जो कलश होगा उसके नीचे एक डिस्क होगी, फ्लावर शेप, एंड ऊपर वही लोटस बन. That is how the kalash has been created. The other structure, once again a Tughlaq structure, same thing will be repeated in both. So it's not only at one place. Although I have not yet started Mughals, but look at the Mughal structures. One of the earliest Mughal structure. This is a structure ये जो नीली गुंबद, ऊपर का जब पिनेकल देखते हो, a pinnacle which is you know, और उसके नीचे inverted lotus. Look at the inverted lotus और ऊपर वो lotus बन. And then of course a fully developed kalash under the Mughals. Humayun's tomb, but not only Humayun's tomb, why accursed Aurangzeb, his Moti Masjid, again having that temple, you know, architectural element, you know, तो हर चीज में elevation पे believe करते थे, तो very high, long, you know, ऊपर pinnacle जो दिया हुआ है, but again in the same fashion. But this is all what was happening when during the 16th century the Timurids come to India, and with the coming of the Timurids, a large number of Central Asian features of architecture once again made an entry. For example, अभी हमने देखा था डोम पे एक कलश मोटिव हिंदुस्तान में ऐड हो गया था, लेकिन अचानक जब पहली मस्जिद, you know, all of us have heard बाबरी मस्जिद आए तोड़ दी गई, अयोध्या में थी, उसके बारे में तो नहीं मालूम वो बाबरी मस्जिद थी कि नहीं थी, बाबर उसके बारे में अवेयर भी था कि नहीं था, लेकिन हाँ आपकी दिल्ली से बहुत करीब एक ऑथेंटिक बाबरी मस्जिद मौजूद है एट पानीपत, काबुली बाग मस्जिद, which was made as per Akbarnama soon after the death of Ibrahim Lodi in the Battle of Panipat. Babar writes that as a form of thanksgiving, he ordered the construction of a Babli, a stepwell, a garden, and a mosque. Perhaps one of the very few mosques which are referred to in the Babar. This mosque today still survives near the battleground of Panipat. It is today known as Kabuli Bagh Mosque. Now, pay attention to the dome of this. Do you find the Kalash dome? Iska architect kaun hai? He is the same architect who later on became the architect of Humayun's tomb. साथ आया है बाबर के. He is a Central Asian. अभी तो बाबर पानीपत की जंग जीते हैं, अभी दिल्ली भी नहीं पहुंचे, and this mosque is created. तो इसमें क्या elements नजर आएंगे? All those elements which are typical of Central Asia, जो चीज जानते हैं उसी को बनाएंगे. So there on the top, you don't have the kalash which is there in the Indian mosques, but you have a Roshandar, a place from where you can regulate whether sunlight is coming or not, and the rain is being stopped from entering into the building. So लाइट भी अंदर पहुंच रही है, हवा भी अंदर जा रही है। This was how, I have no time to show you the slides from Central Asia. Central Asia का ये एक फॉर्म था जो यहाँ पर डुप्लीकेट करता है, which is something which is typical of this mosque. Secondly, as all the other Central Asian mosques, there is a multiplicity of domes. बहुत सारे domes. In Central Asia, you go to look at any mosque, दो टाइप की mosque मिलेगी. One where you have one dome, single dome, or multiplicity dome. I am telling you, I am giving a statement, you can go and check. The mosque architecture from the Mughal period is, we come to know that it is a new type of structure which is being created outside the Indian subcontinent. Bangladesh, Pakistan, Burma, South India, जो भी वो 5-6 मुल्क कहलाते हैं जहाँ पे मुगलों की हुकूमत थी, outside that limit, show me one mosque which is triple domed or which has, you know, a hierarchy. I call them, the Mughal mosques, as Templar mosques. जो मैंने वहाँ दिखाई वो आपको दिखाया कि वहाँ multiplicity of domes जो हर जगह सेंट्रल एशिया में मिलती है. In Sirhind, a structure belonging to the period of Humayun, उसी टाइप से रोशनदान ऊपर. The only thing is कि आप उसमें एक लोटस फ्लावर, inverted lotus has been added to them. Then you come to Fatehpur Sikri. Now you would start finding, you know, reflections of various traditions of architecture within one single building. Now this is a building which is known as Jodhbhai Heights. There was no Jodhbhai during the reign of her. At the best, if there was a Jodhbhai, then she was the daughter-in-law of Akbar. That is all, you know, legends, myths, which have been circulated by James Todd and by the local villagers of Fatehpur Sikri. Unfortunately, something on which ASI has actually fully followed, and in all their textbooks you will find the same thing repeated. आज भी वहाँ भी चले जाइएगा, उनके यहाँ जो ऑफिशियल जो उनके लगे हैं उसको भी जोधबाई पैलेस आपको दिखा मिलेगा. Within it you have these carvings, temple carvings, chain and bell motif. Chain and bell motif might have been once upon a time a part of temple architecture, but by 14th or 15th centuries in Gujarat, आजकल तो बहुत फेमस है ना गुजरात. In the same Gujarat, you have temple after temple where you have chain and bell motif incorporated within the Islamic architecture of pre-Mughal. This was a feature by Akbar's time. It had no religion. It was an architectural feature of one of the regions over which the Mughals were presiding. Look at the carvings once again. I don't have time. I mean, I'm seeing your teachers looking at the watch. You know, these are once again, you know, features which should be found in a religious building, are found in religious structures. Okay, so they are all, you know, disassociated from their religious aspect. को यहाँ पे as a secular, except as a tradition, जो मुगलों का कमाल है, उसको दिखाने की. लोग I'm just giving you the examples. मैं अब इसको आगे नहीं बोल रहा. लोटस के मालूम है भगवान विष्णु किस पे बैठे हैं? लोटस फ्लावर. And at Fatehpur Sikri, this is a symbolic building. Read Abakosh in an article. This is a building which has got just symbolism. It has no functional value. A lotus flower on the top of which the Lord Vishnu was supposed to sit. That is reserved to show the imperial authority of the Mughal Empire. There are a number of articles by people like Bhavarlal Bhadani, Rajasthani sources को use किया है. Then there are a number of texts known as 84 वैष्णवा की वार्ता. You know, a lot of these texts mention that the great Mughal Akbar was taken to be the avatar of Vishnu. And that is what is symbolized on one of the, and these, as I said, were derived from the Gujarati structures. These carvings. ये वही गुजरात में जो so called Hindu stone masons हैं, उन्होंने काम किया. The only thing which they have taken care is that no life is depicted. It is only the floral and geometrical patterns which are created. And that is why such designs are known as arabesque. The Mughals were peripheral, always. They used to live in tent cities. आपने तैमूर का नाम सुना हो? The Great Tैमूर, उन्हीं से अपने को derive करते थे Mughals. And he was the creator of Samarkand, most beautiful. But do you know where he would live himself? Having created the palaces of Samarkand, he would never live in those stone structures. He would always live along with his family in the gardens outside. बागों में टेंट डाल के रहते थे. They were always constantly on the move. It was during the period of Akbar that those tent cities were converted into stone. लेकिन वो पुरानी याद मौजूद थी. Look at the type of carving. These carvings actually remind you of Buddha. Look at the brackets. हम लोग बात कर रहे हैं ना सब सारे ट्रेडिशंस को एक साथ आने मिक्सिंग ऑफ स्टोन बिल्डिंग है और स्टोन को कैसे कार्व किया गया कैसे किया गया जैसे कोई लकड़ी की बिल्डिंग हो. इनकी ब्रैकेट्स की जरूरत क्या थी? They are just invoking that old age when they would have stone structures. Who are the people who are making them? The indigenous. In fact, एक मेरा आर्टिकल है, आप कभी पढ़िएगा देखिएगा. और I have written on the stone cutters marks. मैंने बड़ी मेहनत से स्टोन कटर हर इंडिविजुअल जो पत्थर का पीस है मॉन्यूमेंट्स का उस पे कोई ना कोई एक चिन्ह पड़ा हुआ है, निशान पड़ा हुआ है और सिग्नेचर. I have tried to collect those in Agra and Delhi. And mark you, I found not a single Muslim. Not a single Muslim. All are belonging to the religions of this country. Architects might be Fala Khan or Dhimka Khan. The builders are typically Abul Fazl writes that they are people who have been recruited from Gujarat and Bandar. Some of them are actually in free time also farmers. तो यही के लोग हैं जो उसको बना रहे हैं. ये कभी टेंट सिटीज में नहीं रहे. ये वो वाले सेंट्रल एशियन साथ में आए हुए नहीं जिन्होंने तंबू खनात पर रहते थे वो काफ कर दिया. लेकिन हाँ उस अपने बादशाह के लिए उनको मालूम है, उनको ट्रेडिशन मालूम है क्या है. तो what they are creating is, for example, such type of carvings add some food secret. Cypress trees are blooming, flowers, right? But then along with that, it is only Akbar who could have done that. Life form is forbidden. I just told you कि arabesque किसे कहते हैं? वो पैटर्न जिसमें सब कुछ हो, बस इमेजिन हो. That is arabesque, अरब से निकली. Here you have floral designs, geometrical patterns. Geometrical pattern में क्या है? भगवान जी हैं, वो मंदिर था, ये देखिए स्वास्तिक. नहीं, swastik is a pattern which is being duplicated here. And the lines are living structure. सिर्फ living structure ही नहीं. In fact, you have human forms on the walls of Udaipur Sikri, a building which was underused by the emperor himself. A temple scene with a deity sitting in between. वो ये जो इधर का जो स्केच है, ये E.W. स्मिथ ने 1895 में उसने रिकॉर्ड किया, और 100 साल के बाद 1995 में मैंने ये फोटोग्राफ खींची. जाहिर है कि उस वक्त कंप्लीट था, अब नहीं है, लेकिन यू नो I don't know whether it is visible to you. There are elephants, there is a large number of things happening. ऊपर के ताक में might not be clear from where you are sitting. There is a lady wearing a white cloak with angels standing all around her and a peacock. आपको visible नहीं है, but just believe what I am telling. This lady is supposed to be Mother Mary. White cloak और angels. Angels से क्या मुराद? Men with wings. Like again, head for the cruise. Temple. The शिखर is very clear. अकबर का पैलेस, तरह तरह के उस पे सीन्स बने हुए हैं. दूसरे के मजहब का बिल्डिंग नहीं बना रहा है, अपने मुल्क में जो बनता था वो बना रहा है. ताक के अंदर कौन है? गॉड विद अ पॉट बेली, दोनों हाथ में बीज लिए हुए. इज इट गणेश? नो आइडिया. Pay attention to this one. A monkey, Ram with his bow and arrow. Ram Hanuman. Carved on a building of Akbar. A Muslim. वही जिसने 24,000 चित्तौड़ की जंग में मारे. He is depicting the Hindu god, Father Manzar. He says that once, he is a Jesuit father. He says that once Akbar invited him to have food with. Well, he invited him to come and meet him. So Father Manzar says that when he entered the room where Akbar was sitting with his food laid out before him. He invited him, आइए बैठिए. Manzaret says that on the walls there were the images of the prophets, Jesus, Abraham, and then he says Muhammad, all painted. So जो घर वो जहाँ पे वो बता रहा है कि ये था, ये उसी घर के अंदर के जो मैंने आपको देखी, which is okay. Akbar is Akbar. Look at Jahangir. Perhaps the only painting where Noor Jahan is actually depicted. Noor Jahan is giving a feast to her husband Jahangir and Prince Khuzam. there is a pavilion, and behind the pavilion वो ब्लू रंग का आप देख सकते होंगे, the river flowing. तो ये गार्डन लेआउट है, गार्डन है, गार्डन पवेलियन है, और पीछे दरिया है, तो दरिया के किनारे कोई गार्डन है. From Tuzu के जहांगीरी we know that there was a garden known as Bagh in Noor Afshan, the garden of Noor Jahan, which is today known as Ram Bagh at Agra. Actually, in popular legend, it was known as Aram Bagh, a garden where perhaps Babar's body was rested before being transported to Kabul. जहाँ आराम किया था, उससे वो अब हर चीज तो आजकल तो जमाना राम जी का है, तो वो राम बाग है. That was actually the garden of Noor Jahan Begum, और उसमें शायद तो लोग दरिया किनारे परहैप्स, अब कैसे प्रूव किया जाए कि ये वही है कि क्या है. तो जो पवेलियन है जिसके ऊपर दाल जो कवर के नीचे कुछ आपको छोटे छोटे से इमेजेस नजर आ रहे होंगे, वो एक्चुअली इफ यू पे अटेंशन हियर, एक तरफ जीसस है, एक तरफ मैरी. ये पेंटर ने बाकायदा दिखाया है, पेंटर जीसस एंड मैरी in the building of JANKI. You know that JANKI's period is known for its European influence. Once I reached this place, मुझे बिल्डिंग में सिर्फ वो नजर आ रहा था, व्हाइट वॉश, टाप पे अंग्रेजों ने उस पे व्हाइट चूना लगवा दिया. आई वॉज इंटरेस्टेड टू हैव अ लुक कि कैसे कोई प्रूफ ढूंढे कि ये पेंटिंग एक्चुअली इसी गार्डन की है, कहीं कुछ पेंटिंग मिल जाए. तो मेरे साथ में वन ऑफ द पर्सन हु वाज इन माय आर्कियोलॉजी टीम, actually the photographer, he said, this lime is always translucent, so please vet it. If there is something behind it, it will emerge out. So I said, okay, drink water. एक बकेट चुकाई गई, पानी भरा गया, it was thrown, and for 1 second some image emerged out, but it went back. So what we did was that now we set up the entire scene, the camera on the tripod, one person counting 1, 2, 3, second person with a bucket. On the count of 3, the man threw the water, and the cameraman clicked, and the end result was these two. Jesus with his bed and Mother Mary in her womb. As I was telling you, this is the last thing which I am going to show you, that the Mughals were now so much derided as foreigners. In fact, under them, the mosque architecture as it was developing was given the form of a Templar mosque. This is the mosque of Aurangzeb, जिसका गेट मैंने आपको दिखाया. अगर आप इसको कायदे से देखें तो आपको कुछ बिल्कुल दिल्ली की जामा मस्जिद,
yes sir,
एक्सेप्ट दैट दिल्ली की जामा मस्जिद में 4 मीनारेट नहीं. That white structure is the Jama Masjid of Aligarh, perhaps the last Jama Masjid built by any Mughal, Muhammad Shah. ये ऊपर से सीन है बादशाही मॉस्क. Now, if you pay attention, triple domes, Trinity, the prayer chamber itself divided into 3 compartments. The central compartment has a higher ceiling than the flanking two. The dome in the center is larger, higher, right? Now, when you enter into the prayer chamber, you actually have to climb from the courtyard. There are a number of steps. जो आप चढ़ के वहां तक पहुंचेंगे. A series of steps are there, which you would have to climb to even reach the courtyard. So if you are coming from outside, you have to climb, reach the courtyard, climb, reach the prayer chamber. Within the prayer chamber, the central place, higher, with a larger dome, and then the sides, दोनों तीनों जितने सिर्फ prayer chamber के side तो double story है या higher है, और the other three sides are at a lower. The hierarchy. This hierarchical division of coming from below and then rising up till the God is something which reflects the Indian Varna system, the Indian hierarchical system. The triple dome is again a concept derived from the concept of Trinity. एक भी मुझे कोई मस्जिद आप दिखा दीजिए आउटसाइड द इंडियन सबकॉन्टिनेंट, कोई ऐसी मस्जिद मत दिखा दीजिएगा जो अब 21वीं या 20वीं सदी में बनी है, जो हमेशा अब यहाँ वाली चीजें उभर जा रही हैं. बट इन हिस्टोरिक टर्म्स, any mosque having these two features outside the Indian, not a single example. So what actually we find is that even the Indian mosques which were being now constructed under the Mughals were under the influence which was there of the Indian society. It was not only when, as a student of architecture, you study architecture, you are told about palaces, you are told about tombs, you are told about mosques. It appears as if temples were never built under the Mughals. There are a number of temples. हम ये सोचते हैं कि बनी थी, अरे कैसे बनी होंगी, मुगल तो रूलर थे. दूसरा आदमी कहता है बनी होंगी, तोड़ दी गई. ये देखिए औरंगजेब को इतनी तोड़ी, फलाने इतनी तोड़ी, कहाँ से सर्वाइव करी? There are temples which were constructed, actually sponsored by the Mughals. There is a book by Irfan Habib and Tarapat Mukherjee on the Vrindavan grounds, and go and have a look at it. This is also one of the temples at Vrindavan, which was constructed during the period of Akbar. But I am not going into the details. I'll just show you another temple of perhaps Raja Man Singh, which was given a large number of grants by Akbar. It is known as Gobind Dev Temple. Gobind Dev Temple, which is now actually also there in the Jaipur city palace. The main deity was taken from him and transferred to the Jaipur. This was a temple, Gobind Dev Temple. It still survives. Look at the plan, a cross-shaped plan, which reminds you of, chapel. But then, if you pay attention to the interior, आपको blindfold करके अगर मैं आपको इस मंदिर के बीच में खड़ा कर दूं, it would be hard for you to decide whether you are standing in some Akbari palace or in a temple. Actually, the same type of arches, the same type of domes, the same type of architectural features. But which one encounters at Fatehpur Sikri secular buildings, even palace of Jodhabai, the queen, the Haram Sara, it is the same architecture which is duplicated. The temples which exist from that period of time. फिर एक आखिर में मैं स्लाइड दिखाऊंगा before I end. ये जगह तो आपने सबने देखी होगी. मोदी जी ने बहुत
शोरगुल मचा के यहाँ पे आरती करवाई थी, बैंड्स ऑफ सरयू किनारे विदा दी कपल्स, look at the domes, look at their architecture, which reminds one more of the mosque than of we are dealing with a period, the medieval, where आज हम जो भी विश करें, there was hardly any division as far as the people were concerned. Whether it was a Hindu structure or a Muslim structure, sorry, I don't have the time. I have already taken much beyond the time which was allotted to me. But suffice to say कि अगर आप वृंदावन डॉक्यूमेंट्स हटा भी दोगे, रिमूव भी कर दोगे, आप मिडिवल इंडिया का सिनॉप्सिस हटा भी दोगे, गायब भी कर दोगे, लेकिन ये सारी बिल्डिंग्स खत्म नहीं होने जा रही। और जब तक ऊपर वाले का दिया हुआ आपके भेजा मौजूद है, सोचने की सलाहियत मौजूद है, इन बिल्डिंग्स को देखिए, इनको पढ़िए, they would be telling you the story of the past. Don't treat the monuments only as places for tourism. They are actually registers of the past, which would give you much information what was there during that past, which we are missing today. Thank you very much. Any questions? Or I know I'm not getting much time, but still.
Thank you very much, sir, for that very pertinent talk. I think what is most noticeable is how boundaries are viewed in the pre-modern past, and we need to reconsider how we started viewing boundaries now. Open the house for questions. I can start then, maybe while the others are thinking. I mean, excuse me if my question sounds, I don't know, I'm not a medieval specialist. The use of in the early Turkic architecture, speaking about the use of there's that Kalash motif, there's also the lotus, and there's the Kalash top on the dome. I mean, in temple architecture, this is tied to the use of.
As far as the Muslim structures are concerned, neither these people have studied those texts, nor are they aware of the texts. The thing is that they are borrowing these things not based on their concepts. They are doing it, when they divorce those concepts, the religious, perspective, and use it only as symbols of one region over which they are living. So my entire argument is that whatever these structures show, they show their readiness to accept everything might mean something to you, might mean that thing might mean something to the stone cutter who is including that. Perhaps it is not the Timurid or the Central Asian architect who has asked him to do that. The stone cutter himself is adding those features. He is adding them because he is aware of the sacredness of that feature. But the ready acceptance of the rulers and the sponsors depicts that they are just divorced from any religious perspective, and there is no bias within them कि ये यहाँ की civilization का है, ये particular religion की thought है, and that is why it should be minus. That is what I am trying to say.
That, sir, this is the same thought has been carried over in your last slide in the temple dome.
Exactly.
Because dome has a separate meaning in Central Asian and other.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Incidentally, that meaning which is given to a dome is actually once again borrowed from the Byzantines, and Byzantines has borrowed it from the ancient Romans and Greeks. right? Even the arch is Zoroastrian in character, and from there Islam, बद्दू इस्लाम वाले तो सिवाय खजूर के दरख्त की किसी चीज को नहीं यूज करता है. So call it, if you, the moment you call it Arab architecture is actually a wrong term for it. To call it Islamic architecture once again is a misnomer. There is no Islamic architecture. So yes, this is what.
So, like ma'am said about the Kalash things, they may not know the concept based on rituals or based on religion, but in practice, actually, Sohail Hashmi also mentions it in his work that Kalash was a daily, was something which was used in practice in India, like which depicts the circle of life. Like Kalash is also used to put the asthis in it, and Kalash is also used when there is a religious ritual or marriage. Kalash on top of a Kalash and at the top nariyal or with the leaves. So all these things also brings us to the question: were they aware of the practices or everything that not just Hindu but Jain and everything, the concept of purity?
Very, very good question. You see, actually I should have brought you another photograph. A photograph of a mosque near my house, very close to the Aligarh Muslim University, a mosque which was constructed perhaps around 2010, very recently. And on the gate, the pinnacles on the gate, they are the same thing, a Kalash, and then that Nariyal type of a motif with leaves coming out of it. A typical, motif which we were talking about, and that is being duplicated in the mosque. So I was very interested. I went to that, people who inhabit that mosque and asked them, "Yeah, कहाँ से?" He said, "मालूम नहीं, मैं तो गांव से तो मजदूर लाया था, उनसे कहा था बना दो, उसको बना." As simple as that. You see, all, if you read Abul Fazl's Al-Barnama, there you find a very detailed and good description of the Indian philosophy and thought and tradition. Right? It is only from the Tughlaq period onwards that one starts getting, factual evidence that there were philosophical interactions between the two communities, where both the communities started trying to understand each other. But before that, perhaps at the time when the Quwwatul Islam was built, or most of the Khalji buildings were built, was a time when perhaps these rulers, these sponsors of these cultures, had no idea regarding the customs and rituals of the indigenous community. But in spite of the fact that they had no idea, the more important thing is that they are very ready to accept those traditions which they do not know, perhaps might not have agreed had they known, but they are fine if they are depicted in their own religious buildings. In fact, tombs are more interesting in the sense that mosque तो आप अल्लाह मियाँ के हवाले कर देंगे कि अल्लाह मियाँ पसंद आए ना आए कलश मोटिव से, लेकिन tomb is a place where my dead are being interred. So my wish is much more important than Allah Mia's wish. There also where my dead are being buried, I am fine with the idea that those elements which were otherwise used in temples or other religious structures are being used in those very structures. तो ये एक पीरियड है एक्सेप्टेंस का, अंडरस्टैंडिंग का मुगल पीरियड से शुरू होता है. You know, I am very keen to have youngsters asking questions.
So my question is basically more of an observation. So I have observed that niches like taq, they are a very like prominent feature of mosque or Muslim houses. I have witnessed like around my house that there are taqs, and in that taq there's placed like ideals of Hindu goddess and goddesses. So was it only, you know, sponsored by the rulers, or was it also like locally accepted, these cultures?
You see, no, I won't agree with you that the taqs are found only in
Yeah,
Muslim
it's just an
structures.
observation. Like it's more used in.
No. I'll give you the example of a large number of temples, both Nagaraj style temples as well as the DEVI temples, where there are such niches, and each of the niche having the deity, one of the subsidiary gods or goddesses, or they just be put up there. So a taq is not actually something which belongs to one particular tradition. It is found in both, and the only thing would be that because the true art is known only to one tradition, so perhaps in the ancient period, the art found, the taq found in the structures would be more either squarish or a little curved, but otherwise ऐसा. Anybody else? अरे पूछो यार, बहुत कुछ बोला है यार. आदमी जान लगा दे, आप चुप बैठे. यही कहो कि बात की समझ में आई.
These structures basically held importance and significance to the nobility, to the royal people, but did it have any sort of like impact on the indigenous or the common people living in that time?
Yes, I mean, thank you for asking the question. Till the architecture was confined only to certain materials which were very expensive. Say for example, stones, which are hard to excavate, give shape and carve. All the architectural, endeavors were confined to one section of this tribe. Perhaps one reason why you would find a number of stone temples but hardly any common houses. The rock cut caves give us example, evidence, because the way the ceilings are being carved, the pillars are being carved, that perhaps on the surface the structures of the common people, civic population which were being constructed, was much more of wood rather than of this material, because that was affordable. However, once around 1000 AD, or perhaps 900 something, when in the region of Syed and upper reaches of Punjab, the Ismailis and then the Ghaznavites, Ghaznavids, whatnot, when they started coming, they brought a new technology which comprised two things. One, the small building material known as brick, and the other the lime mortar. Right. Now both the introduction of the lime mortar and the brick revolutionized the entire building system, number one. Number two, it also helped in percolating the traditions from the nobility and higher authority to the communities. Why? Because the brick was not to be excavated from some hill and to be transported to the place where you are building your house. What you do is, whatever plot you have chosen for your house, nearby, you take out that mud, bake it, convert it into bricks at a very cheap cost, buy some pieces of lime mortar, build a bhatti, a furnace. I don't know whether your grandmom, have you ever seen your grandmom having pan or not? I have seen my mother having pan, and I used to be very intrigued because she would buy those lime pieces, and it would be a magic for us young children when that pot was prepared where without lighting a fire, only those lime pieces were put there and some water was introduced to that, and suddenly it would start boiling, and after some intense boiling, intense smoke and water, the result would be that tuna paste. So that is the process how your lime mortar is prepared. So both the things are prepared very easily, and with the help of this lime mortar and the brick, you can make arches, you can make domes. So at a very cheap cost, you can have houses which are larger, houses which are higher, because the weight of the ceiling would actually constrict the height of the structure. The moment you have lighter ceilings, you can go higher. Large halls like this cannot be created with simple brick or simple stone or wood, because you would need some support pillars. So there would be pillared galleries in the ancient Gujarat. Right? But now when you have this wall, you could have larger rooms. Right? So by by 13th century, in around 9th or 10th, it was introduced in the upper reaches, Punjab. By 13th century, that technology entered into the Indo-Gangetic basin, and it is from this period onwards that you start getting the house structures of even people like you. In fact, B.R. Mani, he has written a book on Delhi, where B.R. Mani was actually excavating certain sites near Qutub complex. He did that perhaps in 1980s and 90s. And he was able to find a number of structures belonging to so-called, within inverted commas, Rajput period and the early Turkish period. And that is what he observed, that as soon as this new ruling elite comes, it comes with a new technology, with new building material, and suddenly what we find is that the quantum of building construction was starts.
Sir, this has been wonderful, and when the subtext of our our lectures of is the kind of destruction which is positive happened, but we always forget, for example, when we're talking about temples which are built during the reign of Mughals, we always forget Shahjahanabad. And in Shahjahanabad, in fact, जो बची हुई है वो बची हुई है, वरना in 1857 the amount of destruction that happened of the houses of the nobles and umaras and other places, that is really not talked about, because that is where you also get, we have the fort, and we have the masjid and we have some elements, but उसके अलावा जो सारा 1857 के बाद अंग्रेजों ने जिसको गिराया था, there is very little record of it. There are some paintings which are there, but other than that we don't have records. So what would Shahjahanabad would have looked like with this kind of plural, structures, architecture, give and take, is something which I hope can be recreated at some point.
It's actually a very good observation which you are making. For the sake of the students, let me be very explicit that we are dealing with a period from 13th to 18th century, or say late 17th century, the so-called classical or medieval period. None of us, whether it is Muhammad Ali, Khalid Ahmad Nizami, or Tufan Ali, or I am sitting here before you, none of us is claiming that clashes did not take. They were not. We are not dealing with modern people. The entire concepts were different. The entire thought was different. There are certain things which are taken to be good today. Those were the periods when they were not taken as positive. There were many things which are positive, ought to be positive today, were taken negatively too. I'll give you one example. Babar himself, Ali Babar, mentions two things. One, that daily he would partake opium. And the modern historian says, oh, he's so forthright. He's so open. Oh, he's not open. He doesn't take it to be something bad. It is we who are taking it to be bad. Babar falls in love with a boy, and he mentions how he's pining for that boy. He says, hey, whenever he is not before me, I can't see anything. I'm just pining for the beauty of that boy. And the modern historian says, oh, look here at how truthful Babar is. Perhaps these were the things which were accepted during the period. We are dealing with different times. As historians, we should remember, when we deal with such certain period of time, transport your thought to that period. If you are dealing with ancient, look at what was happening. Don't try to impose things which happened during the period. I referred in between to the works of Richard Eaton. There is a well-established tradition. As we speak of Kul Devta. What is the meaning of Kul Devta? Family deity. If I am there because of the God whom I worship. You come with the blessings of your God whom you worship. So the established tradition was that one dynasty would replace the other. Both might be Vaishnava, both might be Shaivite, or whatever. But as soon as the victory would take place, the temple of the Kul Devta, of the vanquished, would be removed and replaced by the deity of the presiding family. Right? Now, I give you an example. JANKI. He is visiting a place near Ajmer. He suddenly sees a temple. He appreciates that temple like it. He writes in his Suzuk, what a beautiful structure it is. He then enters into that. And when he enters into the temple, he finds that in the Garbh Greh, the deity who is sitting there is the boar god. What is a boar? In simple English, a pig. And what does one mean by boar god? It's one of the reincarnations of Lord Vishnu. So, to those people who were worshippers of this Ajmer temple, it was a sacred place. JANKI appreciates the temple architecture, but doesn't appreciate such an image within it. The temple is preserved, the deity is preserved. Right? So, what I am trying to argue is that sometimes during that period, and I'll give you one more example. I'll give you the example of Aurangzeb. All of you must have read about the Rathore rebellion. All those who have done with medieval details. Rathores revolted after the death of their chieftain, Raja Jaswant Singh, one of the most powerful chieftains of Shah Jahan's court. He was one of the highest mansabdars of the Mughals under Shah. So important that he had been assigned to the northwest frontier. He has gone to Afghanistan. He was involved in the Balkh Badakhsha campaign of Shah Jahan. But unfortunately, before he could return, he died. And he died during the reign of Aurangzeb. Right? Now, when he died, the question was, who would be the next Rathore chieftain? So, Rani Hadi, prominent wife of Jaswant Singh, pleaded that Tika should be given to her candidate. I'm not going into the details of that. Given to her candidate, Aurangzeb refused. A letter of Rani Hadi survives where she offers that, okay, I am ready to demolish the temples of this region if you give the Tika in the name of that boy whom I am demanding for. Aurangzeb doesn't agree to demolish the temples. But then why did she offer? She was okay with the idea that temple can be if one dynasty is placed. Aurangzeb refuses. He says no reason. He finds no reason why they should be demolished. But within 6 months or so, when Rathores actually revolt, when rebellion takes place, the same Aurangzeb who had not agreed to the demolition of the temples at the hands of Rani Hadi now marches forward and the Mughal army demolishes the temples. The temples of all those who revolt, religious places of all those who revolt are to be broken. Whether it is a mosque or a temple, any religious structure belonging to the person who is a rebel are to be demolished. Remember what are the words which Nadir Shah uses for the Mughal king when the sack of Delhi takes place? Nadir Shah आपके दिल्ली में किले के सामने खड़े होकर मस्जिद के ऊपर चढ़ के चांदनी चौक के पास मस्जिद फतेहपुरी मस्जिद डायरेक्टेड the massacre of the population, right? And what does he call the Mughal emperor? Hindua ne kalma ko. The Hindus who also recite the kalma. So the thing is, as I said, temples were broken. Many things which today's sensitivities do not allow, they happen. But then along with that, grants to those temples. We have the Farman of Aurangzeb. I am not talking about Akbar at all or Jahangir. Jahangir also said that he is going to follow the policy of his father. So I'm not talking about it. Aurangzeb, when he becomes the king in 1659, he issues a farman for the temples of Varanasi, which still survives within the precincts of the library of the temple itself. And what does the farman of 1659 say? It says that all these temples at Varanasi should be given protection. All the Brahmins should carry on with their duty as they were carrying on. No one should harm, and if anyone harms, action will be taken. But then, after 10 years, in 1679, 69 में पहला वाला है, 59 में second वाला है. What does the Farman 10 years later say? Order to demolish this mosque. Why? Because this particular mosque was identified as a place which was associated with Dara Shikoh. The Brahmins of this place were alleged to have been the supporters of Dara, and thus those who wanted the overthrow, the illegitimacy of politics. And what does he do? Demolish. So, once again, confirming what Richard intended. Either you become a victor, or if there is a revolt, it is only in that case. So, whenever one is dealing with these, demolitions, you have to read why. Akbar gave the grants. Jahangir gave the grants. Were they very, very secular? No. They were not secular. That term cannot be applied in any economy. I mean, you take Akbar and replace him with Aurangzeb. Had Aurangzeb been the emperor at a time when Akbar was trying to follow the policy of Seleucid, he would have done the same. That was the need of the time. Remember what one of the historians of Akbar's reign had written, Arif Kandhari. Arif Kandhari in Tarikh-e-Akbari notes that if you go on to fight with these Rajputs, more than 200 years are needed to suppress them. You cannot suppress them. What you need is friendship. When Aurangzeb is fighting against the Marathas in the Deccan, the same thing is being told to him by Mirza Raja Jaisi, that we should try to follow the same policy as was being followed. But as we know that the nature of the Maratha polity is very different from the nature of Purandar में क्या हुआ था? शिवाजी had been given a mansab. जब राजा of Amer को mansab दिया था, everyone had, all the Rajputs had joined. What happened when Sambhaji and Shivaji were given mansab? They were removed from the scene. The Marathas left them, the other Marathas, started revolting. ये वहाँ वाला system, compact system नहीं था जो राजपूतों का. The system was different. The times were different. So if you transplant, remove Aurangzeb and place Akbar, he would have also done the same thing. They were mere emperors fighting for their kingdoms. They were not fighting for any religion. To hell with the religion. It is the same Akbar who is digging out bodies from graves and throwing them. He is the same Akbar who is coming up with the policy of Seleucid. Any policy which can conveniently forward his sovereignty is welcome. as simple as that. तो ना आप अकबर आजम को बहुत सेकुलर मानिए, ना औरंगजेब को आप सेटन मानिए, दोनों रूलर्स थे, जैसे जैसे मौका पाओगे तो that is what they did. As a historian, our duty is not to judge them, whether they were good human beings or bad. I always tell my Muslim students, how can you claim that Aurangzeb was a good person? A person who imprisons his father, kills all the brothers, how can he be a good Muslim? None of them is a, कोई रिलीजन से इनका लेना देना नहीं. रिमेम्बर औरंगजेब को कहा जाता है ना कि वो कुरान बेच बेच के रहते थे. अरे आराम से म्यूजिक बैंड करते थे. He was an accomplished player of video. आप बात कर रहे हैं. His own son, जो उसी सन में मराया जिस सन में आप खुद आपकी रहमत हुई है, 1760, who used to live with Aurangzeb. He was an accomplished dancer and a musician. घर में आप मेरे घर आए और मेरे घर में मेरी बेटियां डांस कर रही हैं और मैं जाके कहूँ खुशी यहाँ से कि हराम है, बोका पहना के रखो, आप क्या कहिएगा मुझे? आप मुझे अच्छा मुसलमान कहिएगा या दोगला आदमी कहिएगा? और इनके दोगले क्यों दोगले थे? इसलिए दोगले थे हुकूमत चलाई. बाबर ने भी जाम जो थे वो शराब के खंडवा के मैदान से पहले तोड़े थे और बाद में तो उठा दिए. They are rulers. See them as rulers. Don't look at them as Muslim leaders. चाहे वो कछवाहे हों और चाहे वो they are all.
We now come to the end of our today's seminar. I, Lavanya, the President of the Heritage Club, express a heartfelt gratitude towards Professor Rezavi for gracing us with his warm presence and enlightening us with his amazing insight on structures of shared heritage, where we learn that it's not just the written word, the chronicles, the archives that can be called as history, but the structures that stand tall and literally embodies our past, sharing the various phases of history witnessed all along. I would like to also thank our principal, Professor Swati Pal, who gave us this platform. I also extend our thanks to our teacher convener of Heritage Club, Professor Manisha Agnihotri, who organized this talk. I further express my thanks to our teacher in charge, Dr. Manisha Sharma, and our association in charge, Dr. Tara Shimar, and Shivam sir for his technical support. I thank the History Department Union, Manya, the President, Anika, the Vice President, and the entire team. I further express my thanks to the Heritage Club's Vice President, Krati, Parnita and Pallavi, the members, all of them who made this event today successful. And who can forget the wonderful audience, the enthusiastic audience who patiently gave us their throughout the session. Thank you, everyone.
Just a last word with you. All the youngsters and the teachers of your college, all of you are invited to become the members of the Institute. Full members, so naturally these schools cannot become, but